Good morning. Welcome to IT Live. That's Paul. I'm Joe. I'm sitting in for Connor. I don't have the spreadsheets, but we got some rules to go over. We got some portal updates. We got rules for the portal. We got portal updates. We got everything you want to talk about transfer portal related. First, got to let you know the full insight always going to be on Inside Texas. Go to Inside Texas, get 50% off, get that ultimate fan bundle. Going to put the QR code on the screen. It may say transfer portal, but we're talking transfer portal. Scan there, you get 50% off your annual membership. Now is an awesome time to join, get you through, I think most of the 2026 season, because if you join today, they're going to be playing some games after January 6, 2027. So you'll want to re-up then for when Texas is in the semifinals of the college football playoff, right? I mean, that's what we're all gearing this up for. That's what the whole point of this is, isn't it, Paul?
That is. And watching this year's playoffs, you realize that all the people are like, well, it's good we're not in the playoff because we're going to fix things in the NL. It's like, wow, you kind of want to be in this playoff right now because anybody can win it. But
yeah, it's always like, do you really want to be the 8 seed or do you want to be in the lottery? Like, no, you want to be in the playoff. Like,
yeah,
bar none, every single time.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, you don't want to miss the cut. You want to be playing on the weekend. So we'll get to, you wrote a really interesting article yesterday on portal rules, but we'll go over a few portal updates. If you got some questions, we'll try to get to them here and throughout the show. But I think the big, non-Cam Coleman storyline that really happened yesterday, and there were two, so I'll let you take your pick. Michigan State tight end Michael Manousis committed to Texas. And then the recruitment of Arizona State running back Rayleigh Brown started developing. Texas getting involved with him, looking like a good spot for him. I'll let you I feel like one kind of feeds into the other in a way that people may not be picking up on as far as the offense goes, but I'll let you take it whichever direction you want to go with.
Let's talk about the hay that's in the barn. That's Manousis, right? So big guy from Michigan State. First thing I looked at the minute I heard that he was committed is like Michigan State. Okay. And then I went and looked at his height and weight and I was like, okay, got it. I understand what he's here for. So he's about 6'5", 260, big guy. He can catch. He's not like a speed threat down the seam or anything, but he's here to go be an inline blocker and be big and make 12 personnel a little bit more threatening in the run game. And I think that's a good thing. So I haven't had a chance to watch much tape on him. I know Ian and Connor did they cut a promo yesterday. But I think it's going to be, that's useful because it shows to me some self-recognition that there's been a missing body type in that tight end room, and he fills it.
I think, exactly. And he's going to be wearing 80 or whatever number he wears. I think he had 87 in his picture. He's going to be wearing that full time. It's not going to be a zip-up jersey, and that's right. What Texas has had to do. That's what Sark has had to do with, what was it, Andre Karich in his first year, and then Malik Ogbo. He's done it at Alabama as well. So I think, it gives you that ability to actually have a tight end on the field who blocks like an offensive lineman, gives you that extra gap, but he can still go catch that pass. Like he's not a zero in the pass game like some of the Texas blocking tight ends in years past have been.
Yeah.
And one of the other good things about it is really probably good news for Nick Townsend. So that's awesome. You don't have to park him in line, even though he can do it.
No doubt. Yeah.
I think everybody wanted to say this, but wasn't sure if they could. Is that kind of what Manousis is? Maybe on the Cowboys and not what his college career?
Well, I mean, so Jeff Swaim was an elite blocker at Texas. Right. I don't know if Manousis has been that actually at Michigan State. I think he's still developing, and I think there's hope that if you tell him, hey, this is what is going to get you on the field, here's your role, and you're going to spend the whole offseason working on that and facilitating it, maybe he can become that. But Jeff Swaim was an elite blocker. I mean, he played in the NFL. Is he still in the NFL?
I don't think he's on a roster, but I think he could be if a team got desperate.
But he had a pretty significant NFL career, off the strength of his blocking, and he could catch the ball if he was open, right? So I wouldn't put him in that category yet because Jeff Swain was he's one of the best tight ends I've ever seen block at the college level, certainly for Texas.
Homer's busy celebrating that we have a blocking tight end. Exactly.
Yeah,
I think
big
the party went deep into the night. And I wondered if I know they never were on the same staff together. But I do wonder if Sark and Jonathan Smith, because of this guy that I know, I know this guy that ever had any communication about him and his fit in an offense. So what about Rayleigh Brown? That seems to be where Texas' current running back focus is. Isaac Brown at Louisville, staying at home. Still don't have a resolution on the Jaden Ball story. And I think people, I made this comparison last night. People see Isaac Brown staying and Jaden Ball being uncertain, be like, they don't care. And I'm just kind of making the point where it's like, Texas is driving, like they basically drove 99 yards down the field and are making these teams play goal line defense for players on their own roster. Like, how does that not show that they care, in my opinion?
Yeah, no, I agree. And technically it's pretty hard to say you're missing on a guy who hasn't entered the portal, right? I mean, just as a matter of procedure. Mm-hmm. Rayleigh Brown is interesting because I saw him before like the portal. And I watched him during the season, watched him against Mississippi State, watched him against a couple of other teams. He erases angles. He's got explosive speed and he's a smaller back. In some ways, I think there's a reasonable to compare him to Jaden Blue. He can catch the ball in the backfield and he erases angles. Like he has real speed and a type of speed that we haven't had on the campus since that running back room sort of turned over and we went to Trey Wisner and some of the other guys like Baxter and all that. So that's the positive for him. The negative is I don't think he's an every down SEC back, like, 20 carries a game guy. Or if you gave him 20 carries in a game, a couple of times in a row, you might break him. So if we take him, it tells me that we're taking another.
Right. Like he's just not a first. I mean, he had to do it this year, just like Trey Wisner had to do it last year and this year, but that's not an optimal offense.
Well, and frankly, Wisner wasn't able to do it.
Right.
That's partly why we're here. Not for lack of effort, just physically, he's not built to be a 20 carry. He's not Jaden Ball.
Right.
So if you, in the absence of Jaden Ball, if you can't get the golden apple, you probably want to go get a bunch of apples and take a bunch of different bites. And between Christian Clark and a couple of additions and maybe James Simon and guys like that leveling up, then you can have a running back room that's mediocre. And, not to presage the portal rules, but don't confuse upgrading bad to average as like some sort of failure. That's a big success. And if you do that in enough places, your whole team can look really good. That's the story of Indiana football in several spots. So
I also think that I'm just going to flash a couple comments on the screen.
Yeah.
What do we got? So Rayleigh Brown, Caden Durham, or the guy from Washington, Adam Muhammad. That's three running backs right there that we just brought up. Like that just shows what the position is like at the college level. And, college running backs are probably more valuable than pro running backs.
Yes.
Especially in a different type of salary cap world. But they are, I don't want to say fungible because that's like the fun NFL term, but you can replace them. You can find them.
Well, and honestly, if you have the right ecosystem, you can plug pretty competent running backs into it and they'll put up big production, right? But the lower the level of football, the more a running back can take over a game by himself.
Right.
So in high school, despite the spread and all that, DeSoto still had a running back who took over the playoffs, right? And carried their offense. As you level up in football, you could schematically just take a running back away, right? Even a really talented one. There's a handful of really special guys, Bijan Robinson being one of them in the NFL, who you can basically still impact the game with, but it's always noticeable that all those guys can catch the ball. Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, all those guys can attack the defense in a different way. And there's not many of those guys in the NFL. And I think the Joe fan tends to think every running back is special who puts up 1,000 yards. And then if you go look at the roster of 1,000-yard running backs in NFL history, it's not always an impressive bunch. So
who's the muscle hamster? Remember that guy? It's
Oh,
not.
from Boise State.
Uh, he was in the league a couple of years ago.
Yeah. What was it? What was his name? Doug.
Yes. Oh man, but not an impressive player by any means, but 1,000-yard back. Doug Martin.
Martin.
Yeah.
Doug
And
Martin.
Here's a Texans throwback.
Oh
Dominic
God,
Davis,
he died.
you know? Oh wait, he did. Oh
yeah. Oh my God.
But Dominic Davis, remember him way back in the early Texans games? Dominic Williams now, like those were not impressive. I mean, I thought he was good. And then I think the Texans brought in like Amon Green, and it's like, okay, we're just running the Kubiak system. And
yeah, I mean, the Broncos did the same thing, right? They had a succession of running backs. Everyone's like, oh, this guy's so special. And then the Broncos would pump up his stats and trade him in the offseason for like an actual player. And then that guy would go to wherever and fail miserably. And they'd be like, we don't know what's going on. This is odd.
Why'd you go? Got to get our customary Cam Coleman question in there. Is he a culture risk and only wants money? I don't view it that way. I think he wants money. I don't view that as a culture risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can want money among other things, but honestly, I think it'll be, Jim, I think it's going to be decisive where he ends up. If he goes to a place where there's not a quarterback again and kind of a bad ecosystem, then kind of he is just about money, right? And he's pretty short-sighted. Because I think the value prop to him is he understands he has a certain level of talent that's discernible even through a lack of production, right? But the difference in the NFL is they want to actually see you do it.
Yeah.
They don't want you to just be Mr. Potential guy. Oh, and if I'd had a quarterback, I wouldn't have had 600 yards receiving. It's like, well, why don't you go to a place with a quarterback and let's see 1,200 yards receiving and 12 touchdowns? And then if you do that against SEC teams or even in the Big Ten, you are going to move up on the draft board. I do not buy this immutable idea that like he's a guaranteed first rounder or whatever he does, or he's a top 10 pick no matter what he does. It's actually no. If he has another 600-yard season on a crappy team and a bad offense, he's hurt his draft stock, and he's going to be the 25th player and not the 4th player. And go look at the salary ranges between those two deltas. It's worth your time to go do this correctly. And if you're taking an extra $400,000 from someone to go play with another crappy quarterback in a bad system or play for Hugh Freeze, right? Or that kind of level of program, then you deserve what you get. But we don't know that yet. So give him a chance. Let's see where he ends up. And then we can talk trash about him if it's not Texas.
I see you want to wade into the Arch Manning versus Marcel Reed conversation then.
Well, I mean, Arch Manning's a better quarterback for what Cam Coleman needs. But Marcel Reed, the problem with him, I mean, because people are like, well, he stinks. And I was like, no, that's the problem is he doesn't.
Yeah.
If he stank, you just get rid of him. And you're competing with Texas Tech for Sorsby or whatever, or you're going in for Josh Hoover instead of Indiana. The problem is Marcel Reed is good enough, right? And against most of your schedule. But if he plays a couple of elite defenses, it all gets exposed. And that's what happened at the end of the season.
Got a couple more before we get into the portal rules. Confidence level from 1 to 5 on the following: Zion Williams, the O lineman from Michigan, and the cornerback from Rutgers. Zion, I'm never going to say 5, but I think like 4.5. Yeah. I think that one is trending in the right direction. I don't see what's going to stop it. The O lineman from Michigan, those were two of the biggest losses for the Wolverines in the immediate aftermath. And I know your film study on Sprague and Guarnero was a little like, well, hold on, don't look at his PFF grades. There's a little bit, there's more than meets the eye, but they were still good players. And Kyle Whittingham, I believe, is trying pretty darn hard to get these guys back. Michigan started like, all right, here we go. We're coming back. And they got Underwood and Babaloa and I think Blake Frazier to all like announce they're coming back. So we're working with our old friend EJ Holland on that one. I'd put that one in the middle of the road because I think it just depends on what they heard from Michigan offer wise. And then the cornerback from Rutgers, that's Bo Musco. Checking. I'm checking on that one. I know he visited. His family visited, as well as the Wisconsin linebacker Christian Allegro. So we're doing work on that. We'll have inside updates on Inside Texas about that.
Yeah,
today.
one thing to know about Rutgers is they've got a pretty sneaky good history of quarterback development at that school. And so not knowing anything about the player and having never watched any tape of his, I mean, that is something to keep in mind. Like this just didn't fall out of the air. And obviously we have connections there. We have a guy who might know the personnel pretty well there. So,
yeah. And then wonder if Jaluke would want to get other the Florida running backs. Jacoby Jackson has not heard from Texas. I know that one. And then I don't think Trayon Webb is worth pursuing after his injury, especially for next year.
Yeah, we don't know. We need to not have more injured running backs on campus. That's not the goal. The goal is not to have more injured guys and hope that they get right. The goal is to go get guys that are proven and that are time-tested and durable. And again, that's one of the appeals of Jaden Baugh. He doesn't get hurt. He doesn't fumble. He's a great blocker. He's a good pass. Like, he's just a complete running back. He may not have, that elite sort of running back level where you watch Ricky Williams and you're like, oh, my God, right? But he's an A- at, everything. And so a running back like that is just plug and play. It's Steve Sarkisian's dream. So
last one. Rocky Beers is going to OU. Are you worried?
Rocky Beers. That's a great name. Isn't he the tight end?
You probably weren't too far from him.
Well, yeah, I'm in the same state. That's true. But yeah, that's funny. They also got the Virginia wide receiver,
Trell Harris, right?
Yeah, he's a pretty good player. And I have a feeling that a lot of it, what OU does is they're trying to get guys sort of affordably who fit or fill a niche within their system and their offense and all that. And I think they're doing a pretty good job in that regard. You know, the OU of 2 years ago that was overpaying for people and pronouncing portal victories, the demonic Williams stuff, that's all gone from that program. Unfortunately, I wish Venables was still running the GM side because he'd get real excited and treat it as a competition. And, we got to get this guy. And then the guy would come in and he's just been a replacement level player.
I think that's a good lead in, but first we got to have a quick word from Academy.
Fast one.
Same day delivery powered by DoorDash.
All right, speaking of being at the mercy of your dumbest competitor, that was your first portal rule. You posted 30 of them yesterday. And I think one of the best parts about this is I remember I looked through all these and there are real life concrete examples that do follow or are connected to almost all these rules. But you had, 30 portal rules to live by. And I think in a time when it's like, where is everything? Where is everything? The portal's open. Like, why aren't we getting anybody? This is a good thing to know as far as how to approach it with some sanity.
Yeah, I mean, so imagine you're at a car dealership and you want to buy what car? What's your dream car, Joe? Within reason. What's your dream car?
I'm Ford GT.
Okay, you're in there. You're at the Ford dealership. You're talking to the guy. You're starting to get to a point. He's doing the thing where he's like, I have to talk to my manager. And then he'll get up and talk to his manager and he's not doing it. He's just cooling you. And then you come back and you're starting to make progress. You're starting to break this guy down. And you know what? And you're not even going to take the clear coat package, right? A la Fargo. All of a sudden someone comes and goes, what are you buying? And you go, Ford GT. And the guy goes, I like Ford GTs. Whatever this guy's offering, I'll pay $20,000 more. The salesperson goes, sir, you can leave. And then the new guy's sitting in the chair, right? That's the problem with this is you're in a bazaar. You're in a Middle Eastern souk. And the difference is there's a ton of customers who really want the goods. And it's not that they have a huge amount of product and a handful of customers, which creates a different dynamic, right? So in a pure bidding war, you will lose to your dumbest competitor if that's what it's primarily about. And at a certain point, you can bludgeon any player with enough money. So Sorsby is going to be the quarterback at Texas Tech because they offered him apparently at least $5 million. So you might say Sorsby's actually, I watched him in Cincinnati. He's pretty good. That's not a $5 million quarterback. Like Cam Ward was a, $5 million quarterback, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's a thing's value is what someone will pay for it. So unless you're Karl Marx, and I hope none of you are Karl Marx. So anyway, that's the reality of it. But I would say that you can put a little asterisk there, which is not all portal recruitments are pure bidding wars. But many portal recruitments are pure bidding wars.
Yeah, that guts through rule number 1, 2, and 3. And remember, there are some cases where players bid against themselves. Unfortunately, I think there's a quarterback who's at UCLA right now. We can point out as someone who was their dumbest competitor and ended up losing a pretty good opportunity after going to the well one too many times.
Well, and sometimes that dumbest competitor, they can take a really good player, right? Mm-hmm. So just because you overpaid doesn't mean the player sucks. Like that's internet thinking, which is this, right. Well, they overpaid, so the guy sucks. And it's like, no, the guy still might be good. They still overpaid for him, right? So that Ford GT is a cool car, but the guy who's going to pay $130,000 for it is overpaying. Still a cool car.
I don't know.
How much is a Ford GT?
I don't think they made very many. I think it was.
Oh, okay. Maybe it is $130,000.
It's a very beautiful car, and I'm not like a car person, but I'm like, yeah, that's the car. And kind of to this point, since we're talking about money, Sark must have actually believed that the House settlement meant he wouldn't need donor money anymore. The naivety is unbelievable.
No, that's not true.
That is 100% not
opposite.
Yeah. I think Sark knows that he has to pound the pavement for donor money in addition to all the different things he does. And I think Texas would prefer that they not have to get that's the technical term, and it makes sense, non-institutional NIL, but their preference isn't reality and they got to go get the money. And I think what Sark was saying at that press conference ahead of the bowl game was a little bit like is this what we want football to be press conference that Saban had a few years back.
Yeah, I would say Sark is one of the coaches who understood the realities of NIL and all this stuff as early as anyone. And in fact, he's the opposite of naive. I think he gets it. If there's some naivete, it's probably in our administration where we've got a head coach who is responsible for a lot of his own NIL, whereas a lot of other programs are part of a more larger concerted effort to get NIL. So if you want to fix something in regards to that issue, sir, you might want to look a little more widely than Sark.
Want to get to number 4?
Sure.
It feeds into, it still feeds into what number 1 is. And he's sufficiently motivated. Second or third tier program can outbid Texas on any single player. That doesn't mean that so-and-so is better than Texas.
You left out the best part.
You fool.
You fool. There you go. You have to include the contempt. Yeah. So this wouldn't just even apply to someone that's bankrolled, but this could apply to any school that gets like fired up. So you guys, are you familiar with Keeson Henderson?
Yeah, from U of H or going to U of H. You're
going to know who that guy is if you don't know that name yet. He's the guy. He's the quarterback who wears the coonskin cap everywhere he goes, and he's an incredible athlete who's been learning to play quarterback, and apparently the quarterback uptake has been pretty good. He's going to be the guy at U of H. Some of that is he's got some he's a different dude. He wears a coonskin cap everywhere, but also he loves Houston. So city of Houston, he wants to rep it. Also, the University of Houston made him a priority. So while the Florida States and all these other schools are trying to get him, and he was a very coveted recruit, Houston just paid up. And they also took advantage of, they made the bigger sell of you can be the guy for the city of Houston. We can do it. And they basically just said, so does that make Houston a better program than LSU? Because they come on. We know the answer to that question. But for any individual player, and I mean one player, maybe two, any sufficiently motivated program, Memphis, Houston, Boise State, they can get any of the big blue bloods on one player. Doesn't mean it's advisable necessarily, but they can do it. and you just kind of have to accept it. And it seems ridiculous, but I think a lot of people try to do so what, we're now below Houston? This doesn't make sense. It's like, no, it means this is an open market. And if they rally all their resources behind one guy while you're trying to hit 20 in the portal, they can beat you. Just the reality of it.
He's gonna be a lot of fun for them. And it also, like, the motivation can be just importance. And I think you just laid it all out perfectly. Like, you're not, if that number one quarterback in the country is in your backyard as a Power 4 program, you want to keep him there. And, you know, maybe 25 years ago, if U of H was either, maybe, I don't know if there's, I'm trying to think of how to get to this point, but like, if U of H is not in the WAC or Conference USA 26 years ago and NIL exists, well, maybe Madison High School to the third ward's a lot shorter commute than to Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Number 5, no one carries the expectations, hopes, and excuses of the wrong longer than a failed former 5-star recruit. And this is one that we know quite well.
Yes. Not only native grown at Texas, but also transferred in, right, from other programs. So in 2021, we were desperate to get guys in the portal just to build out the program. And so we were bringing in former 5-stars from LSU and Alabama. And we're like, well, and you had these lengthy analyses by people about, I mean, this guy he wasn't a 5-star recruit for nothing. He didn't forget how to play football. Like, you read that kind of nonsense. And it's like, he never knew how to play football. And he was improperly diagnosed, right? This is not a 5-star recruit, but because he carried that branding well into his 5th year of college, they're going to still be referring to this guy as a former 5-star recruit. And they're going to be trying to imbue him with that, gives him some innate value that this 2-star who had 1,000-yard receiving season doesn't have somehow, right? And the truth is, you are how you play. And so if you're not playing like a former 5-star recruit after a couple of years in college, you're not a former 5-star recruit. But that branding is going to carry forward to probably your late 20s, when you're working at UPS.
And there are multiple multiple genres of this. Like, it could be a player who, I mean, there were players that I think Texas brought in that were those 5-stars who didn't play well, but they did what Sark needed, maybe off the field a little bit. And then there were some players who did exactly what Sark did not need off the field,
yes,
or on the field. So I think there's an urgency maybe for some people to be like, oh, these are the bad people or something like that. Yes, but it's also, sometimes you get players who are not brought in for their production, but are forced to produce and can't.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then I think you also have to consider that there's a dynamic of the recruiting services don't want to raise their hands and be like, hey, we sucked on that one. You know, it's hard for them to leave it alone on an individual player. And every now and then you'll see a guy shine late in his career after moving around. He was a former 5-star. And then they'll be like, see, we called it. And it's like, oh, you're conveniently forgetting these other 8 guys that you blew it on. So, it's just the nature of the beast. And it's a big numbers game, right? Sometimes you do want to bring a guy like that in, and almost think of the portal this way, guys. I know it's like, think about LaVon Johnson, right? Mm-hmm. So we brought that guy in from Maryland. How long was he actually on this campus?
5 months.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little more. But, I mean, the point is, we kicked the tires on him, and we were like, oh, okay. You can go. And that's fine. That's a perfectly fine way to use the portal as well. But you have to be clear-minded about what it is you're trying to do in those circumstances. So that's also a good use of the portal. I'm not saying he was a 5-star. I'm just saying, if you want to just bring someone in because they look somewhat promising, check them out for 5 months on campus, have them work out, see if you can improve some things. Oh, it turns out this guy's not coachable. Okay, he can go. The key is, don't fall in love with these guys, or don't have these position guys get a bunch of ego about it. Like, hey, you brought this guy in, you thought he was going to be good. Like, don't do all that nonsense. You can't do recriminations. You just have to go, hey, this guy wasn't what we thought he was. Let's get him out, and we'll bring in another one.
with former 5-star recruits, it sounds like there are a lot of bad hit rates. But Paul, where can you get good rates?
Place you can get good rates with our friend Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Hey, if you're looking to buy a house, this is the guy to go with. Rates are down, and it's not a bad time to look, actually. This is when you're not competing with a bunch of other people. You're not doing that Ford GT bidding war that poor Joe Cook, he almost had the guy beaten down, and someone came in over the top. Texas Tech came in over the top with an extra 40 grand, and Joe left in his Corsica. So poor Joe. Anyway, give Gabe a call. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. And hey, if you are in a real estate associated business, whether you're a realtor or in a title company or something, call Gabe. He's got some interesting programs that he would like to talk to fellow professionals who are high volume, who are professional, who do a lot, because he's got referral networks that are invaluable to them. And he's got some programs that are invaluable too that can really help you become a superstar with your customers. So give him a call too. Also, not if you're just a customer, but also on that side, anywhere in the state of Texas. Give him a call, 832-557-1095.
And whether you are a millionaire or a billionaire, he can help you. But every FBS program is an interested billionaire away from potential relevance. This is a fun message board conversation. Why isn't Michael Dell helping? Why isn't all that stuff? Like, why I've kind of made the joke, like, why isn't Michael Dell a football fan? And
right.
Not every FBS program has this, but the ones that do have made it pretty obvious that they do have those in their back pocket.
Yeah, I love the call outs of like, why isn't Bill Gurley, partner at Benchmark, bankrolling our program? It's like, why is the famous Silicon Valley investor not giving money to 19-year-olds was the question you just asked. So I guess the answer is he doesn't see the ROI, or maybe he doesn't watch, he watches the games just like we do, but it's not his life. So this is an interesting thing that changes all the dynamics, because Texas Tech, for all intents and purposes, should be increasingly a backwater, because it's in the Big 12, because it's not in one of the two conferences that really matter, because of its history. So for those of you who didn't know, last year was Texas Tech's first Big 12 title, obviously. It's the first undisputed conference title in school history. So in the old Southwest Conference, I believe once or twice they might have tied, like a 3 or 4 way tie for the Southwest Conference title, because there was no tiebreakers or championship game. This is their first undisputed title in school history. So, yeah, they got humiliated in the playoff game, and that was not surprising for anyone who's been paying attention. But this is the best football team they've ever had. So, obviously some of it paid off. And the truth is, you can become relevant if you've got a guy who'll just throw money at it. And the salary cap is not a thing. So, it's a construct, and no one's following it. And Tech is the team that is least following it. There might be other stuff going on too. And this is something to look at with not just any school that kind of jumps on the scene. And I'm not talking about Indiana necessarily, but there's NIL, like real NIL, which is like what Arch Manning gets. Like, he has commercials. Like, Texas doesn't pay him money, right? Then there's the slush fund that we call NIL, right? And then there's another variety where maybe you don't pay taxes on it. And
I think for a little while.
I think there's some programs engaging in that as well. And you could say, well, but everyone can pay. Well, some programs can pay, and you're not paying 37% top marginal tax rates on. So take whatever we are paying someone, because we do everything by contract above books, right? Multiply that by 1.37, and then you'll see what other people might be able to offer on a comparable offer. So, I'm not saying everyone's doing it, but I think some programs are doing it. And it's easy to hide that, because the risk all goes to the player. It doesn't go to the program per se, if that makes sense.
And also, like, rules without enforcement aren't rules. So the house settlement, that's a thing. You have, Texas as a school probably has about $14 million to give to the roster for football. You probably need about 30. So where do you get the rest? You get it from third party oh, but the third party, it's not fair market value, blah, blah, blah. They can't enforce anything. And so there is no rules with third party stuff at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and who decides upon fair market value?
The College Sports Commission until they get slapped down in another lawsuit. You know?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Stalin. I don't.
Oh, man. Number 7, known commodities cost a premium. Wholesale bargains are found in the unknowns and margins. If you don't have an apparatus to discover them, start bidding. Do you remember the Toledo cornerback that went in the first round a couple of years ago?
Yes.
Nick Saban was on the desk for the NFL draft that time.
Yep,
and
tried to buy him.
Yes. And Nick Saban didn't say that, but you could tell that's what it was. But I think the overall point wasn't necessarily that they tried to buy him. It's that Nick Saban said he was careful with his words. We were waiting on this guy to go into the portal and he never did. How do you know about a cornerback at Toledo unless you have a built out scouting department looking for those types of players?
Yeah. So the point of this is that you pay for public information. And what I mean is when Jaden Baugh goes in the portal, everyone knows who Jaden Baugh is. When Cam Coleman goes in the portal, everyone knows who Cam Coleman is. And the bids are going to reflect that, right? When you are getting your running back, your first team all SEC running back from Truman State in Missouri, Cody Schrader, as Missouri a few years ago, they got him for about $30,000. Okay. Not $2 million, but they got $2 million of production out of him. When Arizona State got Cam Skattebo, they got him for $9 in bus fare. And then maybe his last year when we faced him, he probably got some NIL, right? But before that, he was just a guy from Sacramento State. So they didn't have to bid for those guys. They just identified them, and then they brought them in, and they got $2 million production out of a $25,000 check. So that's the ideal, right? As this becomes more efficient, you're going to see probably fewer undiscovered players. And one thing I will say about Texas, I don't think we have a very good formal apparatus for discovering unknown players. I think a lot of our stuff is done through public information or coaching networks. I coached with this guy who coached with this guy, and he says this guy that they've got at South Dakota State's unbelievable. We should look at him. Like, that's how we get info. Whereas OU has, I think, at least a half dozen scouts pouring through film all season, looking at lower tier P4, looking at G5, looking at FCS schools, even Division II, right? Turns out Trinidad Chambliss was pretty good at Ferris State. And all 3 quarterbacks in the playoff right now, what do they all have in common? Do you know?
So hold on. I gotta remember who's even in the playoff. Chambliss, Moore, Mendoza, and Beck. They're all transfers.
All transfers. Yep.
And various types of transfers too.
All various types. Some were coveted and just sort of tried to realize their full market value. Others were arguably eased out. and then you got Trinidad Chambliss, who was brought in to back up their starter. Their starter didn't deliver. Lane Kiffin pulled him immediately, and Trinidad Chambliss is freaking amazing and single-handedly beat Georgia last week. So, these really good players at the lower divisions are out there. If you don't have an apparatus to discover them, then you're going to be paying retail, and you're going to be involved in the auction for the known players.
This kind of goes back. This is a question coming back. Thank you for the super chat. Any untapped programs with money alumni come to mind? Because you've got Auburn and Yellowwood. You got Tennessee and Pilot.
Yeah.
Arkansas and Walmart. I'm trying to think of anybody.
Memphis and FedEx.
But that's not untapped, I feel
like. No. Untapped suggests so the question implies that there's a billionaire who's not contributing and that somehow I'm aware of this guy and he's going to.
I think you can probably guess any state that's got oil under it.
Or,
an
Stanford.
Alumni of one of those, a school located in one of those states.
Look, what if Andrew Luck, he did get a big contribution recently. What if Andrew Luck went and courted a bunch of Silicon Valley guys and former Stanford grads and really got them bought in? Like, could you all please just give, a mere $3 million, which is nothing, right? If you guys all did that, here's what we could do. I don't know. It's believe it or not, Colorado State has more money than you would think in the G5. They just have not been able to actually turn it into victories. So that comes with some later rules, which is you can have all the money in the world, but if you're still blowing the evaluations, you're still not going to have a very good team.
And then I want to bring this up because I want to make sure our point's made. Having a functioning scouting department for players where you spend money, there's no excuse not to have this. They have it. We're just saying that it's not maybe operating at the highest efficiency, right? Or did I put words in your mouth on that one?
I don't know if we have multiple people pouring through FCS tape in September. I'm not saying
right,
like unprompted. I'm not saying a coach goes, hey, this one guy for academic reasons and because his family moved around a lot, he ended up at Sacramento State. He's unbelievable. My brother coaches there. That's different. I'm talking about Jim Nagy has random scouts walking into his office saying, hey, look at this guy from Illinois State. Look at this. Am I crazy here or is this guy really good? And then Nagy goes, hey, all right, go find out about him.
Yeah.
I'm describing a different process there.
Right. Texas definitely has you made a very specific mention of FCS. Like Texas isn't letting the FBS go by the wayside. They have the means to do that. But like, are they going to find Trinidad Chambliss? I mean, how else do you think Texas found, what's his name, Matthew Caldwell? You have to be able to scout those types of guys. But do they see a need for the FCS guys? Maybe that's why they're not focusing resources on that type of player. I feel pretty confidently that they have a FBS scouting department. I don't know if that means that it's a fully, all systems go fully the best FBS scouting department ever, but they do have one.
I'm talking about the method of acquisition.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not, I've got a friend of a friend who coaches here and this Caldwell guy is pretty decent. You should look at his tape. That's very different from, I was watching the Sacramento State Montana Grizzlies game, and Montana's slot receiver actually fits what we're trying to do. Let me go find out about him.
Here's a good way to put it. How did you find out about Danny Scudero? Did
we
he
played him.
put 170 yards on you, or did you know about him in camp?
Yeah, I mean, people are like, we got Matthew Golden. It's like, yeah, we played him and he kicked our ass.
Yeah.
and also we recruited him and we also know he runs a 4.340. So yeah. I'm describing a different process.
Correct. You kind of touched on this one. Don't blindly add talent to a targeted system, then have a system flexible enough to make use of that broad talent. Is quarterback where this is most often broken?
Often it is most broken there. I mean, so here's a great example, Joe. Hugh Freeze brought in Jackson Arnold and then decided he wanted to throw the ball. So I thought Jackson Arnold was going to be brought in to run the ball and then take some deep shots. But because they had Cam Coleman, because they went and got all these other good receivers at Auburn, there was this pressure of let's drop back and throw it 35, 40 times a game. Didn't work out great for old Jackson. Right now, Florida State had DJ Lagway come in.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn is their offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Why is DJ Lagway even talking to them? And why are they even talking to him?
They got not Ashford. They got somebody who fit. He popped today. I think it was
Ashton Daniels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think Ashton Daniels is all that great, but he fits.
Well, he actually fit at Auburn's system late in the year, right? He played better quarterback than Jackson Arnold did. So you have to have some awareness of who you are. So if you're a Gus Malzahn offense, why would you have DJ Lagway on campus? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, what are you trying to do? So I don't know. You at least have a basic understanding of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. Now, this also applies some to running backs. There's some running backs that they can do anything. There's Bijan Robinsons. Forget them. They're special. Most running backs are gap guys or they're zone guys. And if you're a zone outside zone team or heavy or predominant, you better have an idea that this guy can run outside zone Can he have that quick recognition, the quick cut upfield, patience to string it out a little bit? Or does this guy need to be running it, slamming it downhill from the pistol, right? Teams misdiagnose that all the time, constantly. And it's really weird. So at the very least, have an awareness of like who you are and what your system is. LSU struggled with Harold Perkins for 3 years. Where do we play this guy? He's so talented. Well, if he doesn't have a fit in your system, why are you trying to force it?
Maybe offense. Maybe that's where he should have been. Who knows?
Quarterback? Gus Malzahn?
Number 12, we got a few more to get to. The portal is bargaining at a bazaar, not a chain supermarket.
Yeah, I mean, so people are talking about like, overpaying or stuff like that. I mean, the thing's value is what someone paid for it.
Mm-hmm. It's a bartering system.
Yeah, and you can laugh and say that's ridiculous. Like they got ripped off. And you know what? If they did get ripped off, that's going to have ripples in their program. But you know what? If you're spending enough money, you could paper it over. Texas Tech failed miserably with Micah Hudson. Did it matter?
No.
Still went to the playoff for the first time in school history. So, and you could say, oh, LOL, they weren't good. That's not the point. The point is they had the greatest year in the history of the school. And a lot of it was money, and they missed some evals, but you know what? They got a lot of good evals, and they actually built a pretty formidable defensive line. So
13, rebuilding with the portal is tap dancing on a razor's edge. The stakes make it exciting, but slips are brutally punished. Speaking of Florida State
and Mike Norvell, that's right. So, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There's the Goldilocks in the portal. You want to be just right. You don't want to be Dabo Sweeney on one edge of we don't need the portal. We're in the name, image, and likeness of Jesus, right? Or you got the other end of the portal of Mike Norvell, who's apparently a giant weirdo and like struggles to recruit. This is what I've heard from Florida State people, like who know that when they bring recruits on campus, they limit his exposure to Norvell, because they just said he's like weird and uncomfortable with people. So I don't know how to explain that, but he's constantly rebuilding that program in the portal. He caught fire one year. And everyone was convinced, let's study Florida State and their model. These people really understand how to eval talent. And then the next year, they're 2-10. Yeah. And then, was that an aberration? Well, this year, they were 6-6. I don't know, something.
Yeah, they beat Bama though. So
that was odd.
Easier and cheaper to retain than to recruit. Have players worth retaining. This is a truism that's stayed with college football, even from recruiting. It's always tougher to break a public commitment, at least kind of under the old system, than a silent or a non-committed prospect. And it's knowns versus unknowns. You want to have your knowns on your roster and at a better price than if you had to go shopping.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, you have to pay a premium to lure an otherwise happy player away from a program. So if a program is falling apart and like in disarray or what, all this kind of, the money's not right, all that, they're easier to lure. But if you're trying to go get, if someone wanted to go get Arch Manning, I suppose there's a number that could make it happen, but the number would be so colossal, it wouldn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. So it's always cheaper just to retain than to have to go recruit. So have players worth retaining. That's the message there. Have good homegrown players.
You're going to have to explain this one to me. Never overpay inertial bias.
There's always a sense of, do we want to go in the portal? Yeah, this guy isn't what we want. He doesn't fit the requirements we want, but he's a good guy. He's a good player. He plays hard. Come on, we'll just stick with him. Texas has done that. I was very open a year ago about we need to remake our entire running back room, soup to nuts. And people were pushing back because, Christian Clark was a high 4-star, and Cedric Baxter, he was the number 1 recruit, and Trey Wisner, he had a big game against Clemson, and blah, blah, blah. You have to actually watch the players, and you have to be realistic about what those injuries mean. And you have to be realistic about what the players who actually were before the injury. A lot of Texas fans have created a fan fiction of CJ Baxter as Earl Campbell and Ricky Williams before the injury. And that player never existed. Just a fact. So you don't want to have this sense of, oh, everything's fine, let's not change because, we can make these excuses. You have to look at it with very clear and sometimes cold eyes and say, hey, we're not good enough in this room. Certainly that applies to O-line.
And that applies to this one. And we've been living that one with both the Wisner discussion and the Livingston discussion in the past few days.
Every single one of the people that's outraged about this will be the first people to turn on the coach when they retain those players and then they realize the roster's mid and we go 8-4 or something. Those are the first people that will turn on you. The same emotional people who have all this, like, they think the players are their child or something. No, you just have to ignore these people. And all their stuff is about emoting, and it's not based on any like rational analysis of how to run a program or run a roster.
We talked about this one a little bit with Isaac Brown at the top of the show. If they're not in the portal, they're not misses. It's a blurry line these days.
Well, I mean, we're trying to lure people. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that, but if the guy won't enter, he's saying ultimately, I'm not even open to being persuaded formally. Right. So you can back channel all you want. At some point, you probably want to go visit the school you're going to sign with, right?
It's like coaching searches. Oh, we had them reach out. Oh, we had them reach out. And then the interview at the Hampton Inn in Columbus happens. It's that type of thing.
Did you hear about Penn State with Matt Campbell?
They couldn't find his rep.
They couldn't get his number.
Yeah.
And so they're like, we were always interested in him, but we just couldn't get in touch with him. Like, dude, what?
Oh, man. And that was turned out to be a good hire. Most running backs are a function of their supportive ecosystem. Evaluate them by what they added to the play, not how they benefited. Somebody was mentioning in the chat about yards after contact or yards, after contact behind the line of scrimmage and how Bijan and Brooks were so good at doing that. And that's what made them special college football players. Still what makes Bijan special in the league, that he can do that. Hopefully Brooks is able to show it. But, when you have it's not a good comparison. Okay, actually, this is a good comparison. When you have a, 5'8", 170 guy who is taking advantage of veer and shoot lanes just because he can shoot up the seam outside the right tackle. Well, what happens when it's time to get between the tackles against a, real defense and a real system? You have to look at what the tools are and what he's doing outside really the bounds of the offense to know what a running back's really capable of. This is the Denver Broncos thing.
I mean, Jim, the late great Jim Brown once said, people show my NFL highlights where I ran for 70 yards through a big hole. And they say, look at the amazing Jim Brown. And he's like, my greatest runs went for 5-6 yards. And I ran over two dudes in the backfield. I shimmied out of another tackle. I juked a guy. And then as I was falling, I put my non-ball handling arm down, got my balance and fell forward and converted a 3rd and 4. Those are the runs that made me great. It's not when everything got blocked up right and they had the wrong blitz and I ran for 60 yards untouched. Anybody can do that. And so you kind of have to have a discriminating eye. And it's funny because I don't consider myself a great running backs evaluator necessarily, but apparently that's a subjective thing because I read people's comments about running backs and I'm literally wondering what game they're watching, because it's not what's happening. And on the deep dive, Ian and I tried to break down and show people what we were talking about. And I think it was beneficial, but people are just going to have their opinions and, there's not much you can do.
That's why, and that leads into this one. If you're incapable of distinguishing a player's ability from their ecosystem, silence is a sleep that nourishes wisdom. Don't stand on the table. And I feel like maybe these two rules, the poster child for it might be Rashawn Johnson, in that he's got the physical capability. He didn't have as many of these 40, 50-yard runs. I think I got a framed picture of him running against OU in 2019 somewhere. That's one of the more famous Roshan runs. But Roshan was so good, and Bijan, of course, too. Roshan was so good at never taking a negative play. It would have to have been a 11-man defensive effort for Roshan to have been taken down behind the line of scrimmage.
That's a very valuable trait.
Yeah. If you log jam studs at a position, losing one who goes on to start elsewhere is indicative of program health, not failure. I'm trying to think who this is.
Alvin Kamara?
Yeah.
At Alabama?
And then Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow? I mean, there's a bunch of these guys, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, how could Ohio State let Joe Burrow go? I mean, I get it. Joe Burrow had the greatest single season of a college quarterback, right?
Right.
The guy that beat him out was awesome. So
was that Haskins or was it?
I think it was Haskins. Yeah.
It was either Haskins or a last year of. No, it wouldn't have been Barrett. It was Haskins, I think.
Yeah, it was Haskins. It wasn't Stroud. So
right.
The point is, if you have, I forgot that Alabama running back room. Who was in it? Was it Derrick Henry?
Or
I mean, a bunch of dudes, right?
Yeah.
NFL guys, and then Alvin Kamara was like, "I'm out of here. I'm not getting the ball enough." You don't point to that and go, "Oh, we failed. Alvin Kamara turned out to be awesome." It's like your awesome player left because there are a bunch of other awesome players. So had Jonathan Brooks transferred out, thank God he didn't. It would have been understandable, and that's not a giant program fail. It's because you have Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, right?
I will say there is an exception to this rule, and it's the 2015 Texas A&M Aggies.
What do you mean? Explain.
Well, you had Kyle Allen. Well, they lost. They didn't lose one. They lost both. So I guess that doesn't make sense because they lost Kyle Allen and Kyler Murray.
Yeah, but you know what? Kyler Murray sucked at A&M, if you remember.
Right.
They didn't have a supportive ecosystem at all.
Right.
So, I mean, when he left A&M, people were like, well, who cares, right? He was not this coveted guy. And then he, of course, became rather coveted pretty quickly in OU's system. So
a number of incremental improvements across the board can result in a massive total upswing. And
yep, that's tied to number 22, which is if you can improve from bad to average at a position, it's actually a huge win for that unit and for your team. So look, if Texas had Roshan Johnson this year at running back, if we had a reasonable starting left guard, we're a playoff team. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? Wasn't that, like, hey man, I'm just telling you, like, you can shore up a lot of problems because a lot of college scouting and a lot of game planning is about finding that weak link and just kind of mercilessly attacking them. That's why I always say the O-line and your defensive backfield are a lot more similar than you think. The first rule is like, don't have a guy back on either unit that sucks because that guy's going to get a lot of attention. They're going to try to isolate him. And as long as everyone's at least average, and then you, of course, mix in the Trevor Goosebys who are awesome, you're gonna be good. You're gonna be good to go. But having a guy who just is out of place, who does not belong on the field, I think Texas fans saw what that looks like this year, and it's not good.
And it wasn't one player; it was a position.
Multiple.
Yeah,
multiple. It was a position, not just the players.
Sunk cost fallacies destroy businesses, nations, and most importantly, football programs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're committed to a guy monetarily, but the guy's not performing, and there's a lot of ego attached. So remember, as coaches and as even personnel people, you own that player you brought in. You stood up on a desk for him. You said, this is our guy. And then the guy comes in and doesn't perform. What's human tendency? Is it to say, hey, I screwed that up, guys. We got to rethink this. Or is it to say, no, he's good. Trust me. It's going to be next year. What's the more likely human tendency?
To defend yourself.
To defend yourself. So you can't have these sunk cost fallacies, especially when you're paying players now.
Right.
I mean,
because it's actual cost.
Well, the opportunity cost is not just that the player's taking up a spot. The opportunity cost is he's taking up a huge portion of your allocation for that position group. And you're making that position group weaker. So he's not just making it weaker because he can't perform. He's actually taking money from guys who could be the solution. Suddenly you can't find $80,000 for Ahmad Hardy because $700,000 is getting taken up by a guy who can't perform. You cannot have those kind of sunk cost fallacies. The minute a guy can't do it, doesn't matter what you have invested in them, doesn't matter what your staff member has invested in them personally. You got to cut bait, you got to go.
I think we saw Sark do that some, at least on the roster, with a guy he liked in CJ Baxter and brought
It's happening
in.
this year.
Yeah,
It needed to happen last year.
So create positive tension, motivate insecurity, recruit hunger. You got to find. This is why I think part of the reason why Sark stresses state champions. I mean, of course, good football teams are going to have good football players, but I mean. And I think it is a little bit of like press conference red meat, but I do think there is some truth to like, well, if I'm going to have a player who's 18, 19, 20 with me trying to win, I want him to have won when he was, 14, 15, 16.
Yeah, I get that. That's not what I'm going for here.
Right.
You have to create fake tension at the University of Texas because the players have it good, man. And I'm not saying that as a slight against them. It's not their fault. They get here and it's a cool place to play football. And I mean at multiple levels, not just it's a blue blood program. Austin's a fun city. You're admired and loved on campus. You're getting a lot of high fives. This is the fulfillment for many of your families, their dream. Not being a starter at Texas. I got a scholarship to Texas. My work is done. Right?
Right.
Now let's just go and see how it goes. Right? You've got to find some players with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder naturally. And then as a program, you've got to manufacture some insecurity in these guys. I mean, positive insecurity of like, hey, your job's not assured. Your scholarship's not assured. We're running a vitality curve here. And people, complain and bitch about working for Nick Saban. There's a reason that people do their 2 or 3 years and get out of there, right? But Saban was never happy. Did you see Curt Cignetti as Indiana was blowing out Alabama? Arms folded. There was a penalty, like an offsides, and he's just like dog cussing people. Like you almost have to have that sort of thing. Yeah.
That clip. Nickel.
Yeah.
Nickel.
So you just realize that complacency is the default at Texas, and people will argue and say, well, it could be that way at other places. I don't care about other places. I'm just telling you, I've studied the program forever, and it doesn't just exist in Texas football. It exists in every sport. Texas football is just the most exacerbated. Augie Garrido used to talk about this all the time. He used to say, something's in the water. Something's in the water. And he used to say, my number one job as a manager is not like developing my hitters or managing the game correctly or knowing when to bunt. It was creating a sense of urgency and insecurity in these guys that they have to perform because Texas tells them everything's fine. And it's bureaucracy. It's just the way it is. And you've got to find ways to fight it. So that covers 25 as well.
Yeah. High school recruit and develop in the trenches. If you botch it, raise your hand, mea culpa, and hit the portal hard, then autopsy why. Yeah, this has been a popular topic over in the chat today. I would have brought up some more comments, but some of them aren't exactly relevant because this is more broad than specifically targeted to Texas. But this is specifically targeted to the 2026 Texas Longhorns and the 2025 Texas Longhorns, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's so you probably have noticed there's not a bunch of O-line in the portal. So you better do this correctly, homegrown. Mm-hmm. And, in our case, Sark allocates extra scholarships to an offensive line. He purposely takes fewer receivers so he can give more guys to flood in the O-line so we can get more bites at the apple. You got to perform. And if you're not, you have to raise your hand and go, hey, I kind of botched a couple of positions, or for whatever reason, we're not going to get the production we need. We got to go get in the portal now. And if you don't do that as a staff member, you've made two big mistakes. One, you didn't do your initial job. And then secondly, you didn't report on your failure to do the initial job. And now you can find some sort of remediation. But if you just fold your arms and go, we're good. I mean, we're not real good, man. I'm watching the team play. What's going on with your O-line? You got to autopsy that and figure out what's going on.
experienced players at key decision-making positions with just enough ability are incredibly valuable. Texas probably won a game this year based off one pass from one of these players.
100%. I mean, just having a guy with enough ability who is experienced, he's seen it, it's just invaluable to a program. It's just absolutely invaluable. Look at Indiana. What's the thing that characterizes them? They're old. And people say, well, no, they're so disciplined because they're old.
Yeah.
18-year-old teams, like the team full of star freshmen, are never described as disciplined. They're described as fun, and they're described as mercurial, and they're exciting.
We did that this year. They're young and they're hungry, and I don't think that's false, but that doesn't paper over some mistakes they can make because of their youth.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who's started a bunch of games and has been there, done that, he's not freaking out because the defense shifted from cover 2 to cover 3. He's like, they just shifted from cover 2 to cover 3. It's fine. I know it's a route to run. It's not a big deal. A freshman's like, what are they doing? So,
yeah, I'm trying to think of real world examples, but this was the 2025 Texas wide receiver room. Why aren't the freshmen playing? Why aren't they getting in? Why aren't they doing this? I mean, and we did see Khalil Lockett show up at the end. He's the thumbnail picture for this video, but it's because there's a lot of stuff out there that they did not want to put at risk with Arch Manning playing quarterback based off of a true freshman who is in his first year in this offense.
Honestly, if we had a good O-line, we would have played a bunch of freshmen because we would have not had to worry about breaking off routes or communication and those kinds of things, right? But once we botched offensive line, that had a series of knock-on effects that affected every other aspect of the roster.
Balance need with cost and impact. Multiple bites at the apple can trump the quest for the golden apple.
If you can't get Jaden Baugh, let's go get Adam Muhammad and let's get Relik Brown, right? The idea is there might be that one player, Cam Coleman. Hey, if you can't get Cam Coleman, maybe Danny Scudero can still help you. Maybe some other guy can still help you. We kind of did that with the Stanford receiver. God, why did I?
Mosley, Emmett Mosley.
Yeah, Mosley. We kind of did that with Mosley, right? So you don't want to do that too often, but at least have some other contingencies and realize that, that one golden player who's going to change your program, sometimes they don't. So just have some backup plans and some contingencies.
Last but not least, injuries are terrible and unfair, but it's pro football now. It's not a food bank. Vitality curves are remorseless.
You serve someone at a food bank because they need something. You don't gauge their ability and say, well, how can you help this food bank make money, right? You say, you're in need, I will feed you. That's not college football anymore. This sort of sentimentality and, what could have been, or, any moment now he's going to show. You just can't do that anymore. You don't have the time. Doesn't mean you have any hatred or resentment towards these players. It's just, it's a business now. So it's like the Moneyball scene when Billy Bean teaches DePodesta, how to fire a player.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, Jeremy, thanks for playing here. We've traded you. Here's your ticket. You'll be playing for the Milwaukee Brewers now. Pat will handle your travel. Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. And they could play. And you know what? The player goes, yeah, I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not much more than that. The fans are the ones that have the big issue with all of this. And, that's for them to work out with their mirror and their therapist.
Can't play it because we get this struck, but
why? It's classic.
Oh, I know. Well,
have you seen this movie, Joe?
This is
it was made before you were born. Right?
I was going to call this a coming of age movie, and that's true, but it doesn't fit in that genre.
It is it's a coming of age movie. It's just not like a
family one.
It's not a John Hughes film. Yeah. It's not 16 Candles.
Yeah, it's one of those. There are a handful of movies that if I'm flipping channels and it's on TV, it's like, oh, that's staying on. But if I'm flipping channels, I'm not getting the version of it that's at its peak either.
Paul, can you explain why the O-line is not good? Well, Muschamp's corn dog handler, we devoted an entire season to explaining that. I've got great news for you. There's an Inside Texas YouTube channel. There's also a place called Inside Texas. And you could read my postmortems after every game, and I explain why the O-line's not good. You can also go on the Inside Texas YouTube channel, and we break down on all 22 film every game week why the O-line wasn't good, and we even show you why. I mean, play by play. I circle the guy and tell you what he should have been doing instead of what he did. So this is awesome. You get to relive the whole season, starting off with our opener at Ohio State, going all the way to A&M, and you get to learn why the O-line is not good, rather than me telling you in 10 seconds on this live.
You've got it in written form over at Inside Texas, 50% off, join for an annual subscription. We've got all the portal intel, all the any questions you've got. Again, this is kind of a macro transfer portal that we try to find some micro examples for, but we got all that portal intel over on Inside Texas. So go to use that first link in our description to join, and we'll see you all over there. And Paul, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on IT Live, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors.